When my dad tapped his crystal wine glass at the Thanksgiving table, 14 people went silent. I thought he was going to toast a family. Instead, he smiled at his wealthy business associates, pointed right at me, and said, "One daughter is a surgeon saving lives, the other is still serving tables and waiting on people at 33. The room erupted into polite, condescending laughter. My sister smirked into her champagne, and my mother didn't even look up from her plate. They thought I was going to sit there, blush, and swallow the humiliation like I'd done for years. They had no idea that the restaurant chain they loved so much, the very one my father was desperately trying to sign a multi-million-dollar supply contract with that night, was owned by a parent company where I sat as chief operating officer. I stood up, cleared my throat, and said, "My name is Adeline, and at 33 years old, I've learned that some families don't measure love by who you are, but by how useful your job title sounds at a cocktail party. In my family, my younger sister, Victoria, was the untouchable golden child. She became a high-profile orthopedic surgeon, a title my parents, Richard and Eleanor, wore like a gold medal around their necks. I, on the other hand, was always treated like the family defect. When I was 19, I took a job as an entry-level waitress at a local restaurant to pay my own way through college. While my parents bragged to all their country club friends about Victoria's medical school acceptance letters, they spoke about me in hushed, disappointed whispers. What they conveniently chose to ignore over the next decade was my actual career trajectory. I didn't just stay in hospitality. I fell in love with the business side of it. I ground my way up from pulling double shifts on the floor to managing locations, optimizing corporate supply chains, and directing regional operations. By 33, I had built a career I was immensely proud of. But to my status-obsessed parents, the nuance of corporate hospitality meant nothing. To them, once a waitress, always a waitress, a convenient narrative they kept alive just to make themselves feel superior. The tension reached its peak on Thanksgiving evening at my parents' sprawling mansion in the suburban hills. Richard and Eleanor hadn't invited me out of maternal warmth. I was an afterthought, brought in to fill a seat at an extravagant 16-person dinner party. My father's logistics firm had been quietly hemorrhaging money for months, and tonight was his desperate play for survival. He was trying to secure a multi-million-dollar supply and freight contract with the executive board of a massive regional restaurant conglomerate. The dining room looked like a stage set, dripping in sterling silver, crystal stemware, and imported floral arrangements designed to project an image of absolute wealth and stability. But my placement at the table spoke volumes. While Victoria was seated right next to the lead prospective investor, preening under my mother's glowing introductions, I was shoved at the absolute far end of the long mahogany table, seated right near the kitchen door. Every time I tried to join the conversation, my mother would subtly cut me off, steering the topic back to Victoria's hospital achievements or Richard's corporate ambitions. She treated my presence like a minor embarrassment she had to tolerate. I watched my father laugh loudly at jokes that weren't funny, pouring expensive vintage wine for his guests, desperately laying the groundwork to close the deal before the night ended. They were so consumed by their elite performance, treating me like background noise, completely oblivious to the storm brewing right at the edge of their table. As the main course was served, my father stood up, glass in hand, ready for his grand move. He cleared his throat, commanding the room's total attention. He spent the first few minutes waxing poetic about success, ambition, and the importance of family values, deliberately making eye contact with his potential business partners. Then, the narrative took its inevitable, cruel turn. He raised his glass toward Victoria, his face beaming with pride. "Look at my youngest," he announced, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. "Dr. Victoria, saving lives every single day at the hospital. A true success story." The guests applauded, and my sister took a graceful sip of her champagne, soaking in every drop of praise. My father paused, letting the applause die down, before his eyes locked onto me at the end of the table. A slight, condescending smirk played on his lips. "And then, of course, we have Adeline," he chuckled, shaking his head. "One daughter is a surgeon saving lives, the other is still serving tables and waiting on people at 33. A ripple of polite, Snickering laughter echoed through the 14 guests. My mother smiled into her wine glass, and Victoria offered a pitying smirk. They expected me to lower my eyes, blush, and swallow the humiliation like I'd done for years. But as I sat there under their mocking gazes, something inside me shifted completely. The quiet humility was over. They wanted to make me the punchline of their grand dinner, so I decided it was time to deliver the actual punchline. I didn't flinch. I slowly set my napkin on the table, picked up my crystal glass, and stood up. The room quieted, expecting a timid apology or an awkward attempt to laugh it off. Instead, I held my father's gaze, my voice steady and crystal clear. Since my father loves to talk about my career in front of prospective clients, let me set the record straight, I said. I am not a waitress. I haven't served a table in over 8 years. I am the Chief Operating Officer of Apex Hospitality Group, the parent corporation that owns and manages over 200 luxury dining establishments across this region. The smirk vanished from my sister's face. My mother's glass stopped halfway to her mouth. I turned my attention directly to the man sitting next to Victoria, Marcus Vance, the primary investor my father had spent the entire evening begging for a logistics contract. Marcus was staring at me with his mouth slightly open. In fact, I continued, looking directly at Marcus, I believe we've exchanged several emails this week regarding your proposal to outsource supply chain distribution for Apex Group's venue fleet. Small world, isn't it, Mr. Vance? Marcus blinked in total shock, realizing in an instant that the waitress his host was belittling was actually the senior executive holding absolute authority over the multi-million-dollar deal his firm so desperately needed. The silence in the dining room was deafening. The polite, condescending smiles instantly vanished, replaced by an unsettling, heavy tension. My father's face drained of all color, going completely pale as the realization hit him like a physical blow. Victoria sat frozen, her champagne glass hovering in midair, while my mother looked between Marcus and me in absolute horror. Marcus stood up slowly, setting his cloth napkin on the table. He wasn't looking at my father anymore. His eyes were fixed on me with a mixture of disbelief and deep respect. Adeline. Miss Miller. Marcus stammered, clearing his throat. I had no idea you were Richard's daughter. Your team sent over the finalized vendor evaluation requirements just yesterday morning. She's exaggerating, Marcus, my father blurted out, his voice cracking with desperate panic. He forced a strained, nervous laugh, trying frantically to salvage the situation. It's just a little internal family ribbing. You know how it is. A harmless joke between parents and children. Adeline has always had a wild sense of humor. A harmless joke, Marcus replied, his tone dropping several octaves into cold disgust. He looked around the table at the 14 stunned guests. You just publicly humiliated the chief operating officer of the very corporate entity whose contract you are begging me to sign. You called her just a waitress to make yourself look superior in front of this room. The damage was done, and no amount of stammering excuses could save them now. Marcus turned his full attention toward my father, his expression completely hardened. Richard, my firm prides itself on doing business with leadership that demonstrates integrity, character, and respect. Watching you degrade your own daughter to boost your ego tells me everything I need to know about your ethics. The logistics deal is officially dead. Do not contact my office again. Without another word, Marcus pushed his chair back, nodded politely to me, and walked out of the dining room. Within moments, the other guests awkwardly began gathering their coats, whispering among themselves as they beat a rapid retreat. As the front door clicked shut, the illusion shattered. My father turned to me, his face twisted in a mix of fury and panic. Are you out of your mind? He roared. You just ruined this family's future. You cost me millions over a petty, sensitive reaction to a joke. You ruined your own deal, Dad, I said quietly, gathering my purse and coat from the chair. You reduced my career to a punchline just to feel powerful in a room full of strangers. You wanted everyone to think I was beneath you, but it turns out the title you mocked was the only thing holding your business together. My mother burst into tears, and Victoria sat speechless as I walked out into the cool autumn air, leaving them to sit in the quiet ruins of their own arrogance. It's been 6 months since that Thanksgiving dinner, and my life has never been more peaceful. I officially cut off financial and emotional ties with my parents and Victoria. Without the multi-million-dollar logistics contract to save him, my father's firm was forced to restructure under heavy losses, and their lavish lifestyle came to a grinding halt. Victoria finally had to learn what it meant to stand on her own without my parents funding her vanity projects. As for me, standing up at that table wasn't just about revealing my corporate title, it was about reclaiming my dignity. For years, I allowed them to define my worth based on their shallow, elitist standards. But true success isn't about the grand titles you display on a resume or the approval you beg for from toxic people. It's about knowing who you are, quietly building your strength, and never letting anyone belittle your journey. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that you should never let family treat you like background noise just because you don't fit their narrative. Sometimes, the quietest person at the table holds the most power.